Welcome to GLO TV, and today I'm speaking with Anne Cederhall about her latest white paper, which is the State of Airline Retailing 2026. Anne, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
And let's start by looking at the motivation behind this white paper. So, what was the vision of the study, and what are the key takeaways?
So I'm an airline retail nerd, right? And that, of course, is the main motivation. But luckily, I have the likes of Airline Information, who very kindly allowed me to, again, for the second time, run this survey. And I did the first one in 23 and now the follow-up in 26. And this survey was sponsored by Retail Air. And all of us had a curiosity to see what had evolved, what had not evolved, where are we still, are we facing the same issues, challenges, and of course, what has improved.
What are the biggest pain points in your view, and how do they actually affect loyalty and customer experience?
I would say that the recurring themes that sort of comes back is definitely the infrastructure and having to deal with our legacy systems. Or I personally struggle a bit with the term legacy systems because something can be pretty good at what it's doing. It's like I sometimes say, Edifact as such is actually not too bad, depending on what you want it to do, because it can deliver at enormous speed, right? But it's clear that I would say that airlines are entangled into a sort of web of different systems. And I would say a problem is the slowness of their PSS. Things, to integrate takes anything anywhere from 3 to 9 to 16 months. I mean, we've seen that with initiatives in the industry, where it also takes a very, very long time. I believe someone told me that to wait for an NDC integration for Lufthansa was 16 months. So I would say this is the main obstacle. And then secondly, I would say also, I think it's what do we mean by a shopping basket? What do we mean by dynamic bundling? What do we mean by acting, being an Amazon? What are we trying to achieve? And I very often struggle with airlines who they really cannot articulate what they want to improve. And that's when I say, okay, list all the frictions that you have because of the P&R structure that you're working with. And from that, we can then, decipher or conclude what do you need to improve and how can you do that?
In your report, you also name examples such as, Qantas, AirAsia, Scoot, EasyJet, etc. So a lot of the low-cost carriers and ultra low-cost carriers seem to have been doing this really, really well. So which airlines do you think are currently leading this? And also, what are they doing differently?
You are correct in your assumption that low cost airlines or ultra low cost have done this so much better. That is because they're typically on a simpler PSS system. And we could argue that Navitaire is a PSS that can manage orders. There are airlines hosted on Navitaire that would say, no, we actually need an OMS, an order management system on top. Actually, every retailer needs an order management system, right? Regardless whether you're Amazon or whoever you are, if you're my local pharmacy, you need an OMS, an order management system, to manage, not only stock and inventory, but also the sale of those and the control of those. What was shocking in my report is that we hover around the same percentage that approximately, I think it's 69.7% of the airlines out there are not using an OMS, right? And that's a pretty shocking number. So when you see that the low cost airlines are dominant here, That's basically because they have a more simplified PSS. But there are definitely airlines out there who are working, with an order management system. I guess the glossiest example of them all that is fully order native is Riyadh Air and Flyer. But I can also say that standing out here in amongst the airlines is definitely LATAM. It's definitely Air Europa. United shine, they really do. I mean, the stuff they do for customer centricity, and they really excel at their app and making the customer experience really the priority one.
What is hype? What is reality? So, how do actually airlines, in your opinion, utilize AI?
Well, I mean, AI opens up a totally new dimension in harnessing data in a way that they really haven't been able to do at scale. So I see a huge opportunity because, I mean, sorry, but they really suck at data. Sorry, they do. I mean, airlines just don't do data well. And it's all about data. What really I struggle a bit with, that I think is a bit like sort of hype, is this notion of agentic commerce hitting your systems. Yes, it would be massive. Would you need to observe absolutely what's happening? Yes. Should you have a very controlled, I mean, you just can't switch on. I mean, should you have, 10 million searches, a second, you'd have a problem because, as you know, you have an underlying structure that hasn't been modernized in 30, 40, 50 years, right? An area that I see where AI has another huge potential for airlines, that is the LLMs and the harnessing processes within the airline. So another thing that airlines don't do very well is documentation. And the possibility to really get those processes down pat is enormous opportunity. Because instead of having, I remember when my first airline that I started working for, the time spent on understanding some revenue management principles just took forever. And this is the type of stuff you can really document within an airline and make knowledge accessible to everyone in the airline. But coming back to the white paper, it was pretty interesting because I asked a question about MCP server, which of course is, closely linked to AI, right? And are we going in this direction and etc. And I think it was 40% just said that they had no awareness, didn't know anything about MCP, and that was pretty eye-opening, I would say.
What parts of airline retailing transformation do you think are realistically going to take much, much longer to solve? And what are the steps airlines can already take and plan for?
The mere notion of having the world's airlines migrated, the 700 of them migrated to a one order PSS in 2030 is totally unrealistic to me. We have a few airlines that are on full, order-based PSSs, like I mentioned, Riyadh Air. We also have Teak Systems, which is an order-based PSS. We do have elements of this in other. I know that both Condor and Sun Express have elements of this order base, but that transition, as you can imagine, is going to be quite long. And of course, it needs to run in parallel with what we have today. So you need legacy translators, as we call them. I mean, even, Flyer needs a legacy translator and talk to the old world. And you may have airlines that decide, well, I'm not going to migrate. This works just fine. I could even have my own designed PSS, right? And because at the end of the day, a PSS is just reservation and inventory. It's all going to be about peer-to-peer communication, API to API communication. There, where I really think that these server layers, like, MCP is going to help a lot because it really doesn't matter what standard or what language I'm using. I can, the quickest way to just communicate with any other airline will work much more quickly. We're in for a long journey, I would say. We've already had, I think, both Amadeus with Nevio and Sabre with Mosaic communicating that the cost for airlines is going to go up significantly. I believe Amadeus have said 15%. That is quite a hike, for distribution typically is the third or the fourth largest cost for an airline. So this migration is going to be costly.
And thank you so much for sharing your insight. It's always an absolute pleasure catching up with you. And to all our members, we will be sharing the link to Anne's white paper, and you can also access it on our platform. And thank you very much.
The pleasure is all mine. Thank you so much for having me. And I enjoyed this discussion very much. And thank you for having a read of my paper. Much appreciated.